seem well rested. I think you were the few that were actually out sleeping last night when the rest of us were going crazy. But with that, it's time to get crazy and have some fun because this crossover conversation is top all-star moments, and we have some basketball royalty joining me on the stage. I'm your host, Nick Ferrara, and it is with all pride and sincerity that I get to introduce these amazing gentlemen to you here today. First up, he was a 9-time NBA All-Star, an NBA scoring champion, and 2-time NBA slam dunk champion. Say hello to the human highlight film, Dominique Wilkins. Welcome, Dominique. Next up, he is joined by another 9-time NBA All-Star, an NBA champion, 2-time Olympic gold medalist, one of the greatest defenders and point guards of all time. The Glove, say hello to Gary Payton. Good morning, Nick. How we feeling, brother? All right. I'm feeling great. GP, what's up, man? The Glove is in the house. Because I wanted to remind Nick, I couldn't go back to an 89. I can only go 91. I got 90, you know. If that's, I want to, you know. I didn't want to get you mad, so I'm going neutral. Yeah. And you're the Glove, and let's have some fun with it.
Yeah, go back a few more years, like in the 80s.
Yeah.
Not 90s.
Yeah, you got to go back. 80s when we started it all. That Nick started it, then I came at the end of the 80s.
And let's talk about that as we get ready for this crossover conversation, which is highlighting top all-star moments. We're going to talk about the evolution, the history. But before we start with that, we need to speak about the history that is you two gentlemen right here. And we'll start off with you, Nick. Now, your life began in a military situation in France, of all places, right, before taking it back to North Carolina. Talk a little bit about that transition, growing up in North Carolina, what it was like eventually playing in the
Didn't I
SEC
tell you that?
at Georgia.
We just talked about that. Talking about he from Baltimore. I said you from
First of all,
North Carolina.
I grew up in Baltimore, Maryland. I came to Baltimore from Paris, France. Then I went to North Carolina for my high school career. But I grew up in Baltimore, no matter what he says. But the experience was great because growing up in Baltimore, you know, playgrounds was tough. See, we all learned on the playground. You know, we didn't go to the gyms. We didn't, you know, lift weights and wear tights T-shirt. We didn't do none of that. We just played basketball, you know. And that's how you really realize where you stack up when you playing out with the best high school or street ball players in the city. And so they taught us how to play the game and how to have respect. So it just set my life, my career up to make my own decision, go to North Carolina and start a high school basketball career.
Let me add something to that because in today's modern era of pickup basketball, you know, you can find an open gym by a simple text, by social media. You can find out where everyone's hooping. In your days, to go and play with the elite of the elite when you were doing it in Baltimore and North Carolina, how did you know where to go?
Well, I'll put it this way, and Gary will tell you the same thing. If you played on the playground, if you didn't win, you probably never got picked again. That's the way it was, you know. So it made you elevate your game just to stay on the court. You know, and then if you did lose a game, it might not be 4 or 5 games before you get picked again. So it was a learning experience on the playground, much more than you can get in any gym.
Winners stay on, and that's what we're going to do. We're going to stay on winners right here with you, the Glove. I want to talk about your upbringing. Let's talk about what it was like to play in Oakland, some hallowed ground of not only point guards, but just basketball players in general, and then eventually taking those talents to Skyline High School, one of the most dominant Bay Area and international high school basketball programs that existed. What was it like growing up in Oakland? It is a completely transformative social area. There's so much that has gone on in Oakland. What was that like for you growing up there and being part of that basketball life?
Well, Nick said it. You know, him growing up in Baltimore is no different than Oakland. You know, we had the rough streets. What I did was I used to go out, and Nick could contest to this. We used to jump over gates. We didn't have no nets on the rims. We had to go up the poles, put nets up, chain nets, whatever, and just do that. But it was one of them things where we go to neighborhoods. And what Nick said, I used to just take my crew to different neighborhoods in Oakland, California, and just try to play basketball. And we would fight. We would fight to get out of there because there was a lot of players that wanted to be just like us. And then they'll be like, here come young Payton and his crew. We got to get them, you know, and then we'll just play and play. And growing up in Oakland, seeing the things that I seen in Oakland, it made us tough. Just like what Nick said, when he came from Baltimore to North Carolina, it was no joke. We didn't have an opportunity to get in gyms. We didn't have that opportunity. We had one pair of tennis shoes. We had the same shirt. We had the same shorts. We didn't have 6 pairs of shorts, 6 pairs of shirts, and stuff like that, and just one pair of shoes. And we would go out there and just try to make ourselves known, to be known in our neighborhood and be that basketball player. And that's the way it was in Oakland and Baltimore, North Carolina, wherever we were at. But that was just in our 80s, in our 70s, when we was growing up.
Well, let's fast forward a little.
You know what the thing is, too, just to add a little bit to what he's saying, the only way you can measure your greatness, you got to play against the greatest players. And so growing up on the streets, in them 2 cities, was one of the roughest in the United States at that time, is that's when you knew, I could play on any level. If you could play there under those circumstances, you can play anywhere.
Well, I'm pretty much adding on to that is, as you think back, you obviously vividly remember those moments. They help define you not only as a basketball player, but your character, your toughness, your tenacity, and the ability, the longevity to have an NBA career, because you probably have played against, as you mentioned, talents that admittedly were some of the greatest you've ever played against, but no one knows who they are because they never got to the level that you got to by maybe 1 or 2 simple decisions, right? So when you got to the point when you're not only getting paid to play professionally, you talk about having 1 pair of shoes. Well, you're getting paid to wear pairs of shoes, and your pictures on shirts, like you were talking about, as it is to this day. What was that like when you think back of those moments when they help define who you are? So you got to be grateful for those moments, or are you wish that you didn't have to go through those struggles to understand where you're at today?
For me, I wouldn't change a thing. I wouldn't change a thing because it helped build who we are today. You have to go through struggles to be successful in life. You have to, get knocked down a few times. So it helps you get back up and be even more efficient and more fierce. And more importantly, like Gary said, it's a toughness that you had to have growing up the way we grew up. And, and it's funny, he was saying wearing 1 pair of shoes, having 1 pair of shoes. We had 1 pair of shoes for the whole year. If they had holes in them, you put cardboard in them, right?
That's what it was.
But we didn't complain about it. It's just a way of life, and, you made the best out of it. But basketball was our safe haven. That's where we went when we had all types of problems. We go to the court.
And like I said, everybody asked me that same question. And what Nick said, if I had to change anything in my life, I would change nothing. Not nothing. Because I wouldn't be Gary Payton and he wouldn't be Dominique Wilkins. And we wouldn't be that person. And what I hate about it is that we did so much to get to where we at right now, to who we are, to make our kids be that way. Mm-hmm. And then they don't understand and learn it. And this generation is different. And I hate that my kid did not grow up like me so he can understand the struggles and not have 5 and 6 and pair of tennis shoes, and we give him the silver spoon and he living in mansions and stuff. And then when they come out in this era now, it's so easy. They just think that we supposed to give them something. We supposed to. And I'm glad my son went through the struggles he went through. And he went through 6 years of struggling, and then he finally got a knit with the Golden State last year and did what he did, and then he finally got it because he had to understand it's not that easy. And his mindset was that way. His mindset was, well, I can do whatever. They don't want to do that. And then he kept getting cut. And so it was one of them things, and I just think that us being who we are, we seen it. We seen it. And our parents put us through that too. We're older parents and having that upbringing that we had. And that's just the way it is, and that's what we do.
The thing I tell a lot of kids today, I said, it's what you do today that dictates what you ultimately become in the future. And if you are not willing to work at what we call doing your work early, it's hard to do it when you get down the road and you decide, okay, maybe I start working hard now. Maybe I start taking serious now. It starts at a very early age. Hey, look, and I can tell you, by just talking about Gary Payton, he backed down from no challenge. He would challenge anybody. And that was just our mentality. We didn't care who we played against. We didn't care who was in front of us. We was like, hey, we're going to go to work tonight against one another. Whatever the outcome is, we live with it. But we was competitors. We was competitors on a different level. And I wouldn't take any of that back for nothing in the world, because like Gary said, the character that it builds in an individual, you can't get that if you're giving things all the time. And we live in an entitlement world right now.
Yeah.
And nobody is owed anything. You have to get the respect and earn that respect from your elders before you can get the things that you want.
Well, Nick,
because we
yeah.
love giving to our kids.
Yeah,
but
always.
you got to earn it.
Yeah, but Nick said it for me, but he was the same way. You forgot he was playing against Larry Bird, Jordan, and all of them, and he was going at them, dunking on them and getting 40 and 50 and 60. But that was his mentality. He would come in every day and say, I'm not backing down to you. You know what I'm saying? You're going to have to guard me too. You know what I'm saying? So that's just our mentality. That was just the way we were, and that's the way we were brought up. And
we still that way. We just can't move anymore.
Yeah, well, we get up and be aching. So, that's how it goes, though. But, I think that Dominique will contest to this. We grew up in the best era of basketball. I think that was our best era because we were tough. We played hard. We played with a lot of physicalness, and that's just the way it was. And that's the way we look, because we look at basketball and say, okay, it's different this way and that way. They're going to say it was different too, because they'll say we was dinosaurs during that time. The kids will do that.
Gary, is that good or bad or indifferent? We stuck together as players.
Yes.
We played hard. Hey, I may not like him, right, but I respect him. Mm-hmm. And we're going to go to war together. And then after we can talk about it, have, joke, laugh, have fun. We might cuss each other out in practice. Mm-hmm. But after practice, okay, where are we going to eat? It was never personal. Right. And that's the difference, man.
Yeah.
Hey, look, I could have played with other teams. Of course, Gary could have played with other teams. But we wanted to win for our respective franchises. That's why we stayed so long, because it was just a respect for the name on the front of that jersey. It's a little different now.
Yeah, absolutely. It is completely different. And obviously, a portion of that goes back to that DNA that was built from the streets, as you mentioned, the toughness that was built on the playgrounds. But if you think about the reality, Gary, with some of the passes that you've made throughout your career, and Dominique with some of the high-flying dunks you've done, the reality is prior to your professional career, you could have made money with YouTube or become an influencer. These are things that didn't exist then. So
we talk about it all the time.
We don't want that, because we'd have been in trouble. Yeah, a lot of trouble. So I'm glad Instagram, YouTube, Twitter, all that wasn't around. And we had to go get on a payphone, so we didn't have all them camera phones. So I'm happy. Okay. I'm happy.
We can hide.
I'm happy by era.
And then let's fast forward from that journey just a little bit, and it's ironic that it comes back to money as well, because even today, when you made that decision to go to Corvallis at Oregon State, or when you decided to go to Athens at the University of Georgia, now it's okay to be like, here's the bag. You can come on board. Here's an advertising.
And you don't understand what I went through when I made the decision to go to Georgia. Because when you were a great player in the state of North Carolina during those days, you didn't leave the ACC. It was almost like against the law. And I was the first one to buck the system and went to Georgia, who hadn't been to a tournament since 1934. And they're like, how in the hell did Dominique go to University of Georgia? It's a lot of reasons, but, gave me a chance to get an education and play basketball.
There it is.
Absolutely.
There it is. Education, basketball. That's what we talking about.
That's an all-star moment in itself. Right there. Absolutely.
That's my story. I'm sticking to it.
So we'll get off that topic. We'll go to that moment in time when you heard with the second overall selection, the third overall selection in the NBA draft, that moment, what it was like to hear your name called and the realization that your life would forever be changed.
Well, for me, and being the second pick in the draft and then coming out of Oakland, California, it was just a dream come true, because I would look out there and see my parents and my siblings out there, and I would just like, what my mom and dad went through, they don't have to go through it no more. You know what I'm saying? How six of us grew up in one home, and we only had, two and three rooms and stuff like that, and we went through that, and I'm the youngest out of my sisters and brothers, and by 8 years, that was a mistake, what my mom said, but I told her I was a great mistake, So it was one of them things where I didn't grow up with a lot of my brothers and sisters. I seen them, and I just seen them in a passing, but I was growing up by myself. But when they happened, I was like, look, I really didn't imagine this. I didn't dream this. I was dreaming it when I got in high school. Could I go to the pros? But as soon as when David Stern came up there and said, with the number 2 pick out of Oregon State, Seattle picks Gary Payton, your heart drops, your stomach drops, and you be like, "Ooh, man, what's this gonna be like?" And then you get ready to go and play basketball. But when that first check comes, you be like, "Yes, I love it." That's how it goes. And it was one of them things where we were really happy, and finally we had made it of something that we love. And Dominique got to understand that we were playing basketball for free on the playgrounds because we love it. And now people are starting to give us money. And we work, and we getting paid for what we do to love, and we had to love it, and Nick would contest to that is that, it's just a blessing for us to have that.
It's crazy because his life and my life kind of mirror each other because my mom raised 8 kids by herself, and I've been the man in the house since I was 12, and I left home when I was 16, and because one day I knew that I would be a professional player. I told my mom when I was 12, one day I'm gonna make you rich, because she was crying one day. We didn't have nothing to eat, and it was one of those moments. It just came to me. I said, one day you would never have to worry about another meal again. So I worked from the time I was 12 to the time I was 18, and I bought my mom her first house, and that's the proudest thing I've ever been proud of throughout my career, is getting her a home. And so when I got drafted, I remember saying, no, I'm probably going to go to number 1 pick to L.A., but I knew if I didn't go 1, I was going to go 3. But you don't realize it until after your name is called. So when they called me with the number 3 pick to come to Utah Jazz, actually, I got drafted by Utah. And but I wanted to play in Atlanta, and I didn't know how it was going to happen, but it happened a couple of days later. And what I can tell you, when they called my name, it was like I died and went to heaven. I mean, because, as a young man, you don't really understand what it's like to be on a level like that until you get there. And when we got there, and he can tell you, it was something that we was going to try to do as long as we could, because that's how much we love the game. And so to get to that level and be able to buy my family things that we never had was a blessing to me, because I bought my mom a big house before I even had one. I lived in an apartment, and I was cool with that because I wanted to make sure she was happy. And so I said, look, if I do the right things and I take this serious, I'll have a long career. So I have a long time down the road to buy myself a house. And so that's the way I looked at things. And, moving on, fast forward to now, I really appreciate all the things that we went through, as players, because it makes you more appreciative of what you have now. And so I tell you, I'm totally happy and content where I'm at in life.
As you should be, as both of you should be. And we talk about all that work you put in. We went from the streets now to hearing your name called. And throughout that time that you did put in both of your illustrious NBA careers, you were recognized for that several different times. And I want to know what it was like during those moments. You were both named to be on the 75th year anniversary All-NBA team, which is a high honor. To hear your name called, to be inducted into the Naismith Basketball Hall of Fame. Talk about those moments, and talk about the last time that you laced them up as a professional and what that moment was like.
For me, and I always kind of speak for us all, to hear your name called as a Hall of Famer is surreal, because you're anointed as royalty. And, of course, you want to be a Hall of Famer throughout your career as you continue to build your personality. But when you get to Springfield and they call your name and you have to make a speech, you're scared to death. You're really scared. As tough as we may seem, we're softies inside sometimes. and that really made me realize how my life came full circle, to be anointed with such a group like that and going on to the 75 greatest. And Gary can tell you, there's no bigger honor. There's no bigger honor in the world when you're sitting in a room with 75 the greatest players to ever play. I can't even tell you the emotions that we went through. I mean, because Gary could tell, we in that one room and nobody knew what to say.
Yeah,
it was breathtaking.
It was crazy, because you're saying 75 years of NBA basketball. It's just like they picked one person each year. F 75, and they gave us a year, and we are all there. But then what we do is what Nick said, is we are always one. We went there. We had some of the younger guys with us, but with Nick and all of us, we had all the older guys with us. when you go and you can see the Bill Russells, the Larry Birds, and you with them, it's surreal because I grew up watching some of them too when I was young. I grew up watching some of them, and then you up in there with them, and now you in the same class as them. And it's great. And I know Nick know. Shoot, for us to be on the top 75, man, we didn't ever imagine that. We didn't even imagine we'd go to the Hall of Fame. And we both were so lucky and blessed to be on both teams. And it was just surreal for us to be in that room and just be like with everybody. And you just keep looking around and we taking pictures. And Nick, real, I wanted to cry. You know what I'm saying? Because it was one
emotional.
of them things. It's emotional.
It was emotional.
I wanted to cry.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think I did shed a tear.
Yeah.
I believe I did.
We do. We
I think
look
so.
at it for a minute, shed a tear, especially when we get home and we by ourselves.
Yes.
That's when it really happens.
Yes.
When you look in the mirror and say, this is what I've done in my life. And now it's being rewarded like this, you have to shed a tear because you by yourself. Yeah. Everybody might think we be acting like on the outside. That's what we have to do sometime to keep our toughness. But we still softies. We still got feelings. We still got a lot of things, and it's like that because I get that moment all the time. When you laying up in the bed and just thinking, man, how great God have been to us, and you do shed a tear. You do shed a tear.
And on that note, think about that for a moment as you look at that list of those 75 years of the NBA, the story, much like yours. There was generations before you guys that had those very similar stories, playing on the park in a different manner and having to figure things out, coming from, rough upbringings and challenges. And one of those Hall of Famers, Gail Goodrich, said that you, Gary Payton, are as complete as a guard as there ever was. And when I read that quote, for me personally, it was hitting me hard, and I was almost envisioning if I was Gary Payton. I said, man, I can't imagine if someone like that, from a completely different era of basketball, the game has completely changed from when he was playing to when you were playing, to say those words about you and to also be coming from a Hall of Famer, someone that obviously knows the game. What is something like that like when you look at that list as well and see all those other names that played your position, that did what you did, but did it in a different style and manner, but have a completely different story, but you do have that one common bond of being on that team?
Well, let me just tell you about Gary. And he's absolutely right. He's one of the most hard-nosed, toughest point guards to ever play in this league, and he's in your face every possession. And offensively, he was great, but defensively, he was a nightmare for guys. And so someone asked me a while back, could guys like Gary Payton play today? My response to that is, are you kidding? Is that a serious question? It's got to be a trick question because guys like this is only come down once in a lifetime. They only come around once in a lifetime. You don't see guys like that bring that type of tenacity every single night, and especially at his size. I played a lot of years against Gary, and he was a dog. He was a dog, and so he was one of those guys that you had to be ready to play against every night. And so, what Gail Goodrich said, he's absolutely right. You won't find too many complete guards like that in this league.
Well, thanks, Dominique. And it's like I said, Dominique gives me all the credit, but y'all got to understand, y'all seen Dominique play too. He used to dunk on everybody, do everything, score points whichever way it was. But with me and Dominique, we were players like this. We weren't shooters. We were scorers. Our job was to get that little orange basketball through that orange ring and do whatever way we can and make our team better. And that was it. And I just thought that when I went to Oregon State and I played for Ralph Miller, he changed me into a defensive player because he walked over to me and he said, let me tell you something. I can make you the greatest defensive player ever because you got great hands and feet. If you listen to me, you'll be that guy. And once I played for him for 4 years, I went into the pros, and then I just thought, why should I let somebody score 40 on me, and then I'll score 40 on them? What is the outcome? It's even. So why not me score 40 on them, and I lock them up, and they score 15, 16, and I win the game? You know what I'm saying? That's how I figured it. Yeah. I was like, I'm going to D you up and then talk to you and then get you out the game.
Oh, he talked. Trust me.
And then that's the way I was. I just put it that way, and then it started coming like this. He's a complete basketball player. He plays both ends of the floor, and that's just what I wanted to do. I just wanted to be that type of a basketball player.
Wow, and this is some amazing conversations we're having up here. To hear these stories and hear them coming from you, I can feel the soul, I can feel the heart coming out in each of these questions. So I appreciate you guys being completely authentic up here. Before we actually get into the topic of the conversation, which is about the All-Star Game and how it relates to where we're at today, I just want to talk about the moments and what they meant in your life from two different perspectives. Now, in 2006, you got that highly coveted NBA championship. In the much later stages of your career, had to be an unbelievable moment. And for you, Nick, you were crowned a champion in Europe. So you did get that championship, and there was many in the NBA that thought once you left, like, that's going to be it. But you went over there and started a whole new chapter. And while you were there, you discovered wine, which you became a wine aficionado there as well. So I always thought that'd be fascinating.
Yeah, I lived on a vineyard that was really nice. You know, they had a 7-bedroom villa. It was great. And the neighbors used to bring me wine every weekend. So I got into wines, and then we ended up starting our own brand. I started a wine brand with Gail Sayers and Way Boggs, and we had for many, many years, and that wine did very, very well. It was called Wilkins Private Reserve. And so, because I never was into wines until I went to Europe. But when I went to Europe, it wasn't that I wanted to go to Europe. I was a free agent when I was in Boston. I became a free agent, and the Greek team said, hey, we'd love for you to come over here and see how you would like playing in Europe. I'm like, nah, I'm not really interested. They said, well, just come with a free trip. Come on over. So I went over, and the owner had me go to some of his facilities. So he had this huge facility, and he had all these cars, all navy blue, all high-end cars, Aston Martin, Rolls-Royce. He said, if you come and visit and think about sound, you can have any car in there. I'm thinking he's jiving me. So I said, give me that Aston Martin. I go home, it's sitting in my garage. I went back, I said, where you want me to sign? You know, because the money was so great over there. And that's really the only reason why I went, because it gave me an offer I really couldn't refuse. But I'm glad I had that experience, because I had a chance to see other cultures and the way people live, the different type of religions and all those different things. So for me, it was a blessing. I ended up going back twice, but when I came back to the United States, I got Comeback Player of the Year when I came back. But if I really think back and look at it, I probably should have stayed in the NBA to try to get a championship one more time. Just try it one more time. But I have no regrets at all. It was a wonderful experience. Life has a way of throwing you different curveballs. And so I don't look at it as a bad thing. It was a great thing. It's not an NBA championship, but it's the most fanatical win that I've ever had in my life. When you have 250,000 people at the airport waiting for you to come home, wow. Man, that was unbelievable. It was surreal.
Gary, on that same note, as you talked about that 2006, but before you talk about what it was like to finally be crowned as an NBA champion, talk about your time in the early days when you and Shawn Kemp and the Seattle Supersonics were in a scene in Seattle that was during the grunge stage. It was Nirvana. It was a completely different landscape than it is today. It's one of the technology landmarks in the entire world. What was that like playing there? And you guys were the main show in town, and there was so much excitement. You went to the NBA Finals. You got so close. You never got that championship there, but it did happen for you. So talk a little bit about the Seattle portion, and then talk about when you were finally crowned an NBA champion.
Seattle was great. That's second home to me. I'm there all the time. I own a lot of restaurants there, a lot of things I still got in Seattle. But the time that me and Shawn and Detlef and Sam Perkins and Hershey Hawkins played together, we played together for almost 7 years. And it was a experience where we came every night and everybody feared us. You know, we won about 50 to 60 games, about like 5-6 years in a row. And the culture there, people will say it rains too much. I love the rain. I was in the rain for 17 years. I went to college at Oregon State, which was right down the road in the Northwest, and it was just great for me. It's a city where it's beautiful. You can grow a great family. You stay in, you can do the things that you have to do. We got the market that was down there. You do all that with the fish and stuff, and then be on the water with the boats and stuff. And it is just great, and as we was going through all that, we were having fun. The 90s was fun. It was fun. You know, like I told you guys, we didn't have Instagram and all that other stuff. We can go and we'll walk around the street and don't be like this. And then next thing you know, you be up on a camera and they showing stuff that you're doing somewhere else. Man, we didn't have all that. You know what I'm saying? So it was fun to do that. And then, you know, when I leave and I started chasing a NBA championship because I was really done with basketball. You know, it's like Nick, no, we play basketball for fun. And when it doesn't be fun no more, you don't want to play it. You don't want to be there anymore. And then I just started signing 1-year deals to go to teams that I know that I can get a championship because I was listening to the knucklehead stuff is you will never be this if you don't have a ring or a championship with is insert. You know, that's not real. You know, but as I went to Miami and we won it with Pat and Shaq and D Wade and it was great. It was a great moment, a great feeling for us to hoist that trophy up. And I was the older statesman of the team. I was the oldest one on the team. I was the captain. I had to keep that team in check and to win it. And me and Pat sat there and talked for about an hour afterwards in the locker room. And he was like, I told you I was going to get you one. I told you I was going to get you one. And then I told him, I said, I told you I was going to come here and help you. You know, because our deal was for me to come and groom a young kid called Jason Williams, or called White Chocolate. I was just supposed to groom him. You know what I'm saying? I wasn't supposed to play, you know, and he got hurt. And then Pat put it all on me, and I got there, and then I got the young stallion and D Wade, who took off from there and put us on his back. And I had to tell Shaq, look, Shaq, you gotta step aside, man. You older, it's over. This young kid is the guy. We gotta go through him. And Shaq listened to me because he's like a brother to me, and we won the championship. We got down 2-0, won 4 in a row against Dallas, and next thing you know, everybody was playing their role. And it's hard to play a role, and Dominique know, when we the man, and next thing you know, you only taking 5 shots or 4 shots and only scoring 3 and 4 points when we used to score 20s and 30s. And next thing you know, we took that role, and everybody took a role, and we got a championship. You know, and I'm happy I went through that experience. You know, it was a great experience for myself, and you know, I had a great time doing it. And it's nothing like that to win a championship. But I went through it last year with my son. You know what I'm saying? I'm there with the ride with him all the time, and I'm looking at him, seeing him, and when he won it and he cried, it was just like the same with me. You know, I just felt like, you know, the father-son thing. It was only 5 of us to ever do it, to win a championship as a father and a son. So I got a 2-time experience, and it was really great for me to do it. And, you know, I would, like I said, my career was 17 years of great basketball.
Absolutely. Both of you guys, as we mentioned, just phenomenal careers. And, you know, the celebration of those careers mid-season is the All-Star Weekend. And that's what we're here to talk about, All-Star topics. Neither one of you strangers to the NBA All-Star Game. Both of you 9 times selected to be the best representatives of the elite basketball league to ever exist. What was it like to be chosen as an all-star? And as we think about it right here in Salt Lake City at NBA Crossover, right outside we have NBA Jam Session that started here in Salt Lake City 30 years ago. So this is the 30th anniversary. And to see what it's become, right outside these doors is a basketball amusement park. There is the crossover of technology, fashion, basketball, all these things that always have existed, but now they're celebrated. We were talking backstage, and we'll share some of those memories here about what it was like when you were playing in the NBA All-Star Game in the weekend, what it was like, post-game and the parties and the galas and things like that compared to what it's become today.
Well, when I first came early in my career, my second, third year, I can't remember that, I thought I was going to be an all-star. I'm averaging 27, we winning. But in the East at that time, I got to beat out Dr. J in his prime. I'm not beating him out. Larry Bird in his prime. I'm not beating him out. Bernard King in his prime. I'm not beating him out. Because they pick by position in those days. When you establish players like them who's still balling, you had to wait your turn. So when I was selected for the first time, I couldn't believe it. I had to pinch myself because I'm here with the greatest players to play the game. and I'm still playing. I've got Dr. J on one side, Bird and Parrish and Moses Malone. It was an unbelievable feeling, and it felt so good to me. I said, I'm going to try to make this thing every year, and I made it 9 years in a row. But the first time is always your greatest moment, and I can't even tell you to this day how that really felt. But I mean, I was speechless, because it had guys that was on that all-star team that I idolized growing up, like Dr. J. Everybody wanted to be like Dr. J. And Dr. J, is like a brother to me to this day, but it's a guy I emulated. I wanted to do everything that he did. And so I had a lot of guys that was a mentor indirect. They were the mentor to me. So I took a page out of the book. I'll tell you something I used to do, and I know Gary did this too. You look at a great player, right? And you take one thing that great player does, and you practice it over and over and over again until it becomes your move, your great asset. And we did that with 4 or 5 players, so we built the arsenal of things that we did where one player wasn't going to guard us. And when I don't care who you were, how great a defensive player you thought you were, you needed help, plain and simple. But I took different pieces from different players to get to that level, and that's how we thought the game. We were thinkers, man, of the game, of how are we going to play better than our opponent. And so that helped us get to that all-star level. And so we got here, and you got the players' ball, which they don't have anymore, which you had to be dressed up, and you had live entertainment. And then you had different parties and stuff around All-Star. You didn't have a lot. You had maybe 5 big major parties. You didn't have 30 or 40 because you couldn't go to them all. But 5 major events you went to, man, it was some of the best All-Star experiences I've ever had.
Yeah, and Nick is telling the truth. My first All-Star was here 30 years ago, you guys, in 1993, the first time I made it. And that person that I always idolized my game after was John Stockton. Everybody knows that. Everybody knows that. I'm really a big fan of his. And it was one of them things where Nick was right. I had to beat out Tim Hardaway, Kevin Johnson, John Stockton, all of them guys. I had to beat them out, but I had to wait my turn. And I waited my turn. I didn't wait too long because I made it in my 3rd year in the league. I made it the 3rd year in the league. I started being an all-star. And like what Nick said, really, Nick, we made it 10 times in a row, but it was the all-star was canceled. So it was really 10. Right. So, but we made it 9 times straight in a row. And I was there with everyone with Nick, almost every time with Nick. And it was amazing. And reason I liked All-Star, it wasn't because of the game. It was because of the locker room. Because them guys who I was going in that locker room with, I didn't idolize them at the time. I wanted to kill them every time I played them. But it was a person I wanted to meet them and become friends with them. Like John, like Carl. All them guys I wanted to get to know. I wanted to get to know, and we became friends, especially when we went to the Olympics. And I got to be around them for like 3 or 4 months. We became real tight. It's just like last night, I was with John and Carl all night. All night. And we were sitting up there reminiscing over the thing, and we put together with our families that we're all going to on a trip. You know what I'm saying? And that's just the way this friendship goes, and Nick knows it. Me and Nick are real tight too. Every time we see each other, we talking about different stuff. We talk to each other on a regular basis and stuff like that. So our friendship is more than that. I mean, these All-Star games were big for me because I got a friendship with them.
You know what? In the All-Star game, it also does, and for life after basketball, like he said, we're friends. We have guys that we never talked to as players. Larry Bird and I didn't speak for 13 years or shake hands. But now we're all like very close friends because we live for the stories of All-Star experiences and the time we've played. But we were such fierce competitors that we didn't talk to each other. We didn't shake hands. We didn't sign jerseys. We didn't do none of that, because we didn't want another person to get that close to us. But now, as life has evolved and we're not involved with the game itself, we love being around each other. All-Star Weekend, Legends Brunch Weekend is what we live for, to see all the guys that we may not have seen in many, many years. And the only time we get to do that is All-Star Weekend.
And let's talk about the All-Star Saturday night portion. We'll start with you, and we'll go back in the time machine. And then, Gary, when we get to you, we're going to talk about more present day, going back to last year. let's talk about what it was like. Obviously, you are Shooting Stars champion here, but obviously the most prolific title that you can get outside of being the MVP is to be the slam dunk champion, especially when you were playing. Now, that's a different crown today than it was then, but no matter how many times it's been attempted to be duplicated and recreated, if you ask people that have seen all of those contests, they would probably go back to those moments with you, Michael Jordan, and Spud Webb, and the continual battle. It was more, when I go back and look at those videos, it seems, and I remember watching them live, it was more like a game environment, like I'm going to win. This isn't like I'm having fun showing off.
You know what? It was fun for the crowd, and we did it for the crowd. We really didn't do it for us, but we also wanted to win. And my first dunk contest was against Julius Erving, Larry Nance, and all these guys, and I was in awe because it was the doctor. So I didn't really compete like I should have because I'm in awe of Dr. J. But after I got over that, I said the next year I'm going back to the slam dunk contest, and I said I'm going to win it. I'm not going to be stargazing. I'm going to win this thing, and I won it. And the thing about me in the slam dunk contest, I wanted to set the tone for the dunk contest. You know, I'm coming out with my hardest, best dunk, the very first dunk. So I'm putting the pressure on early. And that's every dunk contest that I've been in, that's what my objective. And unfortunately, that was Michael Jordan's objective too. He wanted to set the tone too. But it created the greatest battle in dunk history, in my opinion, because you had two great players who were going head to head. And I probably won 4 dunk contests. I got credit for 2, but that's okay. It's okay. But no matter who won those dunk contests, the fans got their money's worth.
Right.
And that's the thing that made me happier than anything else other than winning and losing, is the fans enjoyed it.
They really did. And I mean, the interesting part about it is in 1976, it was started as a marketing gimmick to attempt to save the ABA, and Dr. J was the first champion. So I can imagine to go out there and see someone you've always looked up to and then have to battle with them. But at the same time, like you said, you used to dunk angry. I mean, you look like you had the rim owed you money or something.
Let me just say something real quick about dunking. Dunking was a tool for intimidation for me. It really wasn't who I was. Because when you see highlights of me, what do you see? Slam dunk, slam dunk, slam. It's very difficult to get over 26,000 points on dunks, okay? I mean, I average 2 dunks a game, seriously. But I tried to dunk as hard as I could to keep guys to try to challenge. That's what it was for to me. And plus, get your teammates fired up, get the fans fired up. And I never boasted after a dunk, you know? Not unless I didn't like a guy, then I did. But but most times, you know, I threw it down and went down the other end. I didn't pop my jersey and, you know, flex my muscles because you paid for it. If you did that, you couldn't do that. But dunking was just an inspirational tool that I used, and I just took it and put it in slam dunk contest. And people always ask me, did you work on those dunks before the contest? I said, no, it's dunks I was doing in the game, so I didn't have to practice or work on it. Everything was spontaneous, and the same thing with Michael and Spud. Everything was spontaneous.
Yeah, which is so fascinating because you saw what it had become. It had become scripted, and there was all these different props and elements that were fanatical and absolutely amazing in their own right.
You need 3 things: a pair of sneakers, a basketball, and your imagination. That's it. That's all you need.
And little hops as well, probably.
Well, you got to have some hops or you wouldn't be in it. But again, because you want to keep the element of surprise. You want someone to be totally wild and shocked at what you're going to do. But when you put props and stuff out, people pretty much know what's coming.
Oh, you used to
3 things: a pair of sneakers, a basketball, and your imagination. That's it. That's all you need.
And little hops as well, probably.
Well, you got to have some hops or you wouldn't be in it. But again, because you want to keep the element of surprise. You want someone to be totally wild and shocked at what you're going to do. But when you put props and stuff out, people pretty much know what's coming.
Oh, you used to surprise them. You used to look in the crowd and see all your fellow teammates. Be like, I mean, just the reactions of your fellow players and even your fellow competitors. I mean, it was like, oh man, it was fun. But now I gotta top that.
But you know what? I take a guy that if he was doing a slam dunk contest today, I vote for him every time. It's Sean Kemp that he played with. He was an animal. I mean, a guy his size and the creativity that he came and displayed with, it was incredible. So I loved going against Sean Kemp in the dunk contest. But I used to tell Sean, I said, Sean, you coming out with everything you can early, and you get in them last rounds and you start to fade, man. I said, you got to save some of that stuff. And you know what I'm talking about. But he was incredible, man.
Well, let's take it to present day, Glove. I want to talk about last year when you think about it, when you had your own team in the Rising Stars Challenge, and look at how it's changed so much. Now there's several games. There's a celebrity game. There's the Rising Stars Challenge. There's the G League. All these different elements which are incorporated, elements of the WNBA included. And then think back to when you were playing, it was East versus West. So it's like when Nick talked about, if you were in the East, and because they went by position, you could be the second best small forward in the game, but you might not make it because you're in that division. So now it's a completely different format. What are your thoughts on the way it was, the way it is today, and your current experience last year when you were involved with the Rising Stars Challenge, excuse me?
Well, it's more of an entertainment now. This is entertainment, and that's what it is. It's a showcase, and the NBA it went to that. It's just going to that. So they're trying to get different things to get people more involved and excited. We got a lot of young kids that watch PlayStation, do things like that. They look at that and they want to see that when they come and play basketball. And that's just the way it is, like the teams are going to get picked tomorrow before the game. They're going to pick and stuff like that. But that makes it entertaining. It's exciting. I like the Rising Star Challenge last year when I coached it because now it makes the younger guys play hard. They don't go out there and just let somebody dunk on you. If you watch them games yesterday, they were excited. They were excited. They get to 25 first, and he make big shots, and they were jumping up and going crazy. That's what it is. They went in a tournament style. Now, if you lose, you out, and then you don't make the money. It's about more money. So they're making it entertaining for you guys because the fans are what give it to us. You guys give it to us. Y'all make it happen. Because if y'all don't come, that stadium gonna be empty, and we're gonna be playing in front of no one. So we got to make it entertaining for you guys. But in our day, I think we were more competitive because we never talked to each other. When we were playing against each other, we were going at each other head. And Dominique, tell you the truth, we might say something after the game, but when we on the floor, Dominique ain't my friend. I'm going at him, and I'm gonna talk crazy to Dominique.
And let me tell you, Gary would hack the hell out of you. Okay, he would. I'm telling you, man. It's like ref. Call a foul, something on this guy. But you know what the thing is? You talk about Karl Malone, who played most of his career here. Karl Malone and I didn't talk to each other for 27 years. Never spoke until New Orleans All-Star game. We sat down, and he had his family, I had my family, and I cracked some corny joke. He said, Nick, I didn't know you were that funny. I said, we thought you was an a-hole. So it just broke the ice. It broke the ice for both us, and now we're like brothers, Yeah. We live to talk to each other and see how each other's families are doing. Just a wonderful person. But as a competitor, and Gary would tell you, we didn't let people get that close to us.
Yeah. And that was just the way it was, But nowadays, these guys, they friends. They on Instagram together. They want to get 200, 300 million likes. You know what I'm saying? It's about likes now. You know what I'm saying? And they all tweeting with each other, and that's what makes the social media what it is now. That keeps them irrelevant. Yeah. It keeps everything irrelevant for them, and then it keeps these kids and fans seeing what they do, because that's why they get so popular.
Look,
because
we would have been doing the same thing if we had all.
If we had it, we would have did the same thing to make it do it. We had to get adjusted to it and do it. But as Dominique know now, we're not really on there. We probably got people doing it for us or doing stuff for us and all that crap. So, that's just how it goes.
I'm too lazy for all that.
And I can't just be showing you everywhere I'll be at a restaurant. I'll be like, hey, I'm over here at 13, 15, and you come running up on me and be like, hey, Gary. No, I can't do that. So, it's like that. So, but we just not that in our generation, but that's what it is right now. And this is how it is in this generation. They have to have that social media.
That's absolutely how it is. And, we appreciate the full disclosure, and it actually sets it up perfect for just the final question, unless you guys have any other thoughts. My guy Will right here in the front, little Will, who's going to be Big Will someday, he was here before the doors. I don't know how he snuck in. I was like, he's the only guy in here. We got to figure this out. So I said, Will, I'll tell you what, since you stay here and wait here patiently, I just need to get one question from you. What do you want to know from these guys? And so he asked, is there any pregame rituals, routines? What do you go through for a game? And is there any differences between doing it on a normal game, a playoff game, and an all-star game?
Well, Dominic, Will, let me tell you something. Let me tell you what I did. I used to come to the gym. I take off all my clothes, get in this jacuzzi, have the ball boy go get me a Big Mac, order of fries, 6-piece McNugget, and I would sit in the jacuzzi and eat it. Then get out of the jacuzzi, wipe my face and mouth off and stuff, leave all the stuff right there so the other people could pick it up. And then I would get stretched, and then I'd go out and play basketball. I had to do it every time, and that was just the way it was, you know? And then I'd go out and have a great game. I used to always have that in my mind. If I don't eat McDonald's before my game, I'm not going to play well. And that was it. So I used to have to go get McDonald's. So they would always be there. They would like, Gary, you going to get sick. I'd be like, no, I'm not. I'm not going to get sick. I'm going to run it off anyway. I ain't nothing but like 20-something years old. So I'm going to run it off. And that was just it.
Mine wasn't quite as dramatic as that, but I don't know. I used to come to the game an hour and a half early, but before the game, I used to be off my feet. I could not be on my feet. And I used to listen to jazz music. If I listened to anything other than jazz music, I was going to have a rough night. That's just was my thoughts and mentality. So I had to listen to jazz music on the way to the game. And I used to stop by this park on the way to the game, and I would see these kids playing. And I would go out and play with those kids for about 20, 30 minutes before I got to the arena. It was like clockwork every game. And then once I got to the game, I only went out and shot for like 25, 30 minutes. And then the rest of the time, I'm sitting in my stall, and I'm waiting for the coach to come in. Because he's coming in, he's going to cuss somebody. I had Mike Fratello, you know Mike Fratello, the Lord General. He was going to cuss somebody out because he felt like somebody wasn't going to be ready for the game. And I used to have to give a speech right before every game to get our guys going. And it made me relax because I was able to talk out to our guys and make sure that everybody was on the same page. But if I ventured away from any of those rituals during that day, I felt like my game was going to be way off. And I was going to have a bad night. And if my palms wasn't sweating, I knew I was going to have a bad night. But if my palms sweating, somebody was going to have a problem that night. You're right. If your palms are sweating, as crazy as it sounds, if you had sweaty palms before a game, you're going to have a big night. I'm telling you, it was just a part of our DNA. But any player to say he doesn't have a ritual before a game, he's not telling you the truth. Everybody has a ritual.
He's lying. And hopefully we all have sweaty palms because we're going to have a big night tonight. I hope you've enjoyed Crossover Conversations, All-Star Moments with the Legends. Give it up one more time for the glove, Gary Payton. The human highlight film, Dominique Wilkins. And thank each and every one of you for joining us here at Crossover Conversations.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.